three types of mobile application: native mobile applications, Cordova Ionic mobile applications, React native scripts mobile applications. Three different ways to build up basically the same thing. Let's say you want to build your to-do list, the next level to-do list, a to-do list no one before did in that way. You can choose different technologies. Let's say you want to hit both Android and iOS market. So you can build native applications. So you build the whole app for iOS, and then again you build the whole app for Android. You use native APIs directly. The code gets compiled into a binary, and there is no way to revert that code unless you have the source files. Those native applications are usually performing better because they use native APIs, native functions that Android and iOS offer you, and usually this is much faster in terms of performances. It's easier to reach a higher frame rate for animations, and it's easier to read from sensors or the camera and so on. This is the first type. The setback, or the dark side, the bad side, is that you need to build two different applications. You can share the knowledge in terms of like, yeah, I know the user experience, but you must build your application from scratch 2 times. Second type of technology, B, is the Cordova Ionic. This technology consists in using JavaScript, HTML, and CSS, and you can basically build your application, native application, using whatever web technology, like a website, like a web application. How that happen? Basically, Cordova run a native application, and inside this native application, it load a transparent browser. What that means? It means that imagine to load Chrome inside your native application without knowing it's Chrome, and then from Chrome you load your URL, and then you show your application. Of course, this happens with local URL, so you don't really need to connect to a server, and that's why on the end of the day, when you create these applications with Cordova Ionic and you put them on the store, you can use them offline and they look like native applications. The good thing is that you can use your code once, and then thanks to Cordova, you can basically build it for iOS and Android, so you can reach the whole market. The dark side is that performances-wise is not as a native application, because you are still loading a web view, and inside the web view, so a little browser, you are loading your CSS, your JavaScript, and your HTML. So if you want to reach higher speed animations, if you want to create video games and things like that, this may be a bit tricky with this technology. This technology is very popular, and so is very good as well to build prototypes. So if you want to build a quick prototype that works for the web, for Android and for iOS, then you can do it this way. You can reuse the code, and with a little bit of extra work, you got the application in the both stores, Google and Apple, and on the web. The third way C, it's the React Native or native scripts way. Both frameworks work in the same way with few differences, but the concept here is different again. You build a native application from web technologies, so exactly as Ionic and Cordova. However, what happens is the framework, the technology around, the wrapper, convert your view, so convert the HTML and the CSS into native code. That means that you can still build your interface using pseudo HTML code and pseudo CSS code. However, once you finish, you compile it, and this became native code, exactly as building native applications. All HTML and all CSS gonna get converted. JavaScript doesn't. JavaScript gets run through an external process. It's a complicated way to say is that here is your main app. It opens like a sub app, let's call it in this way. The sub app run all your JavaScript, and this JavaScript can talk with the native app directly and can talk with the APIs of the operating system. So what's the good thing of this is that you can reach native performances, you can easily access sensors and cameras and so on, and you can still use your HTML and CSS and JavaScript more or less the way you know. The dark side, what is that you can't really use all HTML and CSS rules and elements, you need to use the subset that either native scripts or React Native offer you. What's the best solution for you and your application? I don't know, that's up to you. Just remember that if you use the native code, you can't share the code, of course, but you're gonna reach much higher performances. If you use Ionic Cordova, you can reuse the code not only between iOS and Android, but also for the web. But you will never reach those high performances in terms of animation, frame rate, and quickness of accessing sensors and so on. If you use native scripts, React Native, it's a kind of an halfway between the two, so you can have higher performances and easier way to access sensors and cameras and so on. However, you can share 80–90% of the code, and if you want to share that code as well for the web, they're gonna add you another 20% of extra work on top. The choice is yours.